when the Covington kids episode broke out in the media, it seemed to me very obvious that there was a great need for an explanation to the reading public of who the Black Hebrew Israelites were, since they were the ones who had initiated the confrontation, and they had been recorded saying some truly vile things, and really to many groups at once. They didn't just target the young white Republican kids, but they targeted other groups and insulted other people. And as I was one of the rare people writing who had personal experience with members of the Black Hebrew Israelites, I had known some close. I also knew their foundation story. I knew their saga of going to court. I'll explain later. They used to be considered a gang, and then they became a religion. So I know all this stuff, both from a journalistic perspective and from a personal one. So I pitched an article explaining who the Black Hebrew Israelites were to quite a few of the outlets that I had published in before. I have about 20 pieces with the Daily News over the last 5 years. I had a column in Vice, Newsweek, and nobody wanted to touch the story. And I'm thinking to myself, like, there's this whole outcry about racism, and here is an example of blatant, recorded racial harassment, and it's on video. You can hear it, you can watch it. So nobody knows. I don't think too many people know who these people are, why they say the things they say, and yet I do. And I think I represent a neutral position. I don't hate them. I don't love them. I just know about them. But I could not get the article published. The Daily News, they told me that it was not their type of story. Daily Beast, with which I've published about 45 articles, which I have a long history of the Daily Beast. They said it just really wasn't part of what they wanted to publish. It wasn't part of their worldview, this information, which seemed like such a strange thing to me, because I had published articles with them about Chinese dragon boats and how to turn a cigarette filter into a razor, bizarre things spanning the globe and the world, all kinds of marginal and unusual things. And yet at the Black Hebrew Israelites, I got enormous pushback. People didn't want the story.
Right. So why is that?
Well, we'll get there. And my story was not about Covington at all. I wasn't there. I did not claim to know anybody. I did not have an opinion about the Covington kids. The only connection of the Covington is that that's how the Hebrew Israelites got brought up in the news cycle. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to explain who they were. So I ended up publishing the piece with Tablet, which is a Jewish website. It's a great news outlet, but it has a limitation in that it's marketed for Jews, so the stories that they publish are of that subject. I can't publish a story about prison cooking in Tablet. Anything I've published in Tablet, I think 3 times, and it's always been about Jews, whether Jews in prison. This time it was about these Black Jews, and they were willing to publish a story because the Black Hebrew Israelites have a very contentious and aggressive relationship with Orthodox Jews. Now, if you live in New York City or the Bronx or Times Square, then you might even have witnessed this. The Black Hebrew Israelites believe that Jews, like Ashkenazi Jews who are white-skinned and the ones with beards and hats, they scream and yell at them because those are the imposters. In their belief system, those are the people who are pretending to be Jews in order to claim benefits. They're like a secret mafia, while the Black Hebrew Israelites are the true Jews. What they are the lost tribes. Perhaps you know this from the Bible, the lost tribes of Israel. They were tribes that, there were 12 tribes originally, 2 tribes survived, and 10 tribes were lost. And the lost tribes have been identified by the Black Hebrew Israelites. I've seen posters which say that one of the tribes is the people of Panama, one of the tribes is the people of Honduras, and so far. These identifications have no basis in history or fact. But for the most part, people can believe whatever they want according to most people. I think we live in a secular, free society. But the Black Hebrew Israelites are also violent and aggressive and hostile about their views. They attempt to get into confrontations. If you look on YouTube and type in Black Hebrew Israelites and spitting, you will come up with many videos of people being spat on during street confrontations. Now, my particular expertise with the Black Hebrew Israelites was in a place where they were fairly comfortable and where there were many of them together. You have to understand this is a pretty small group because they believe in some rather intense and unusual things for most people. But prison is fairly open to such groups. The Nation of Islam does most of its recruiting in prison. And on the other side of things, Odinism, I guess you'd call it the religion of white supremacy, they do a majority of their recruiting in prison, where they tell people that they have to worship the Norse gods and that the Aryan race is the one chosen by God to lead the way. There's a big argument inside of them about whether Jesus was an Aryan or not. I mean, it's pretty clear in the Bible that Jesus was a Jew, but they don't like that part. So prison, I've written an article about this for the Washington Post. Prison is very open to all kinds of religions that proselytize among people who are desperate, who are willing to kind of believe in anything, especially if there are benefits. Now, there are faiths that don't bother with prisoners. For example, I never met a Scientologist in prison. You know why? Because to be a Scientologist, you have to pay. You have to pay for the classes. You have to pay to reach levels. Like Tom Cruise is a fully operating thetan. That cost him $10 million or something. Travolta paid his millions. So the Church of Scientology does not send Dianetics into prisons. But the Nation of Islam certainly sends everything it can into prisons. So there's 2 groups that have spawned off. So if the Nation of Islam is kind of a spawning off of regular Islam, like the Nation of Islam is Black Islam. So in that sense, the Hebrew Israelites present themselves as Black Jews. And up until, I think the mid-90s, they were still considered a gang, because they do have a kind of a militant wing among prisoners, people who will commit violence on behalf of the organization. But they saw what happened with the 5%ers. That's the Nation of Gods and Earths. The 5%ers are an offshoot of NOI. They were considered a gang by prison authorities for, I don't know, the last 50 years. So if you were proven to be a member of the 5%ers, you went to solitary confinement because you were a gang member. But then they went to court and they had attorneys argue that their rights to practice religion are being oppressed by the prison authorities, and that the 5%ers are not a gang. They are actually a religion called the Nation of Gods and Earths. And as a result, they won. And now there's holidays in prison that the Nation of Gods and Earth, do. And so the Black Hebrew Israelites did the same thing. They also went to court and got themselves registered as a religion. And that preserves them from the thing is, though, is that the rabbis who work in prison will not have anything to do with this group, because there's many conflicts. I've seen myself. I was the rabbi's clerk in 4 different prisons, and some Black Hebrew Israelites just come for the food and leave, but I have seen people who come to disrupt.
Right. You mentioned that in your tablet piece, that
yes.
they were very animated and that they, in fact, attacked the facility rabbis.
Yes. Because the rabbis would say, I'm a child of Holocaust survivors. You're telling me I'm not a Jew, and the Israelites, they're, for one thing, they have nothing to lose. They're mostly doing 25 to life if they're in a max. And it gives them enormous street cred to attack a facility rabbi for your faith. So they do it. They cause an argument. They'll say that the facility rabbi is not qualified to minister to them, and sometimes it ends in violence.
Wow. So can you explain maybe a little bit about what that would look like, and and how they were able to get away with that and still remain?
But they weren't on an individual level. They certainly were not able to get away with it. They were put in handcuffs, dragged away to the SHU, and normally the cops, they're seeing like a young guy attacking an old bearded rabbi who's an old man and someone who represents an old faith. They don't like that. So a lot of these Black Hebrew Israelites were the ones who were getting beat up in the stairwells. I mean, that's not good. That's not right. They're not sentenced to being beat up in the stairwells. They're sentenced to do SHU time, solitary confinement time. But nevertheless, their actions were considered provocative and really, the Catholic priests never get beat up. The men of the cloth who serve prisoners have very, very hard jobs, and everyone recognizes that they would be better off working just about anywhere else. So for somebody to attack them is just in bad taste. I mean, there's not a lot of support for that. But when you're brainwashed to believe that your identity has been taken away from you by these people, the Jews who run Hollywood, and they have all the money, and they tell the joke, why money's green? It's because the Jews pick it before it's ripe. I heard that joke a couple of times. When you believe stuff like that, and then you see prominent Jews being bad, like Harvey Weinstein or Epstein. Anti-Semitism rears its head yet again. So, yeah, the Black Hebrew Israelites were, unfortunately, we have a propensity towards violence inside. I had the misfortune to work closely with one. I didn't really understand that he was committed to these beliefs. I thought he was just a guy doing time like me, and I got him a job, and we were supposed to take care of the mentally ill, and he turned out to be a horrible person. He was abusing the mentally ill and starving them, and he ended up trying to get me put into protective custody, snitching on me for some nonsense he made up. But when other people said to him, how are you why did you do that to him? He got you the job. He said he's one of the fake Jews. He's a fake Jew. Well, who cares what happens to him? So, yeah, that happened. wasn't a nice experience.
So, and right now I'm looking at this report from Pew Research in 2011,
yes.
And it was a poll of 50 state prison chaplains from all 50 states. And one of the important things that's noted here is that a quarter of the prison chaplains who responded to this survey described religious extremism and religious as religious groups covering and actually doing non-religious activities.
Yes,
That was
they're
part of
gangs.
So is that something that you think is applicable in this case? Is that what you...
It's very much applicable in this case. However, the Black Hebrew Israelites are not the biggest culprits here because they don't have the numbers. It's a fairly small group compared to, for example, Nation of Islam or just Islam. You know, Islam in jail, the guards called Prislam. You know, it runs as a gang. There's a head of security. There's a fund to help people who have gambling or drug debts. You can't get into a fight with a Muslim unless you're fighting all of them. You know, it's not like that with like Catholics or Protestants. Like if you have a problem with a Protestant, the other Protestants have no obligation to jump you on his behalf. So the Black Hebrew Israelites do function as a gang in that way, but they simply don't have the numbers for it to be a very substantial problem. Then on the street, once they get out, I don't know how much they can really support because there's not a lot of money for them. You know, when I got out of prison, I stayed in touch with the Jewish groups that I had been involved with in prison, and they helped me very much on a spiritual level. I never asked them for any money, but I'm sure if I was really broke and hungry or something, they would have helped me. And I think with Islam, if you become a very devout Muslim in prison, you come out, you join a mosque, you go to masjid, they'll help you too. But Black Hebrew Israelites, I don't think they have the resources behind them. So the ones that you see at places like Covington are the real zealots. They're the ones who don't care about anything but this. You know, have you ever noticed their clothing? Are you aware of their clothing? They have specialized clothing.
It appears that when they're out, I've seen that they wear dark clothes. I always see there's a lot of Hebrew.
Yes,
I've noticed some of their videos.
Okay, so they dress up in leather jackets that are specially here in New York. They're made in Harlem on 125th Street. There's a special shop. I forgot the name of it, but everyone's been going there since the 70s to get their Hebrew Israelite leather jacket. They're leather, and that will have like a picture of Africa with a Star of David and a Lion of Judah, and also the Hebrew, usually a chai, which is the word for life. So they use this symbolism taken from Judaism, along with Pan-African nationalism of the 60s, in a weird conglomeration. In some ways, they look like Rastafarians, but you mentioned the black clothes. The black clothes is to show that they're street soldiers. So when they go out into the street, the purpose is confrontation. Not necessarily physical, but certainly confrontation with, if they see visible Jews, like Orthodox Jews, they will yell at them and say, you're the fake Jews, and they'll curse and they'll spit, and they'll do it to women just as quickly as to men. It's not a nice thing. And then, if they see black men together with white women, they hate that. They're very much against interracial dating. They think it's horrible. They say that the white woman is there to steal the seed. That's what they call children. Like, so in a sense, they've adopted the racist thinking of a Klansman, but reversed it, to meet racism with racism. So you end up with double the racism. That's not much of a solution, in my opinion. With things like Nation of Islam, I've read all their literature, and especially interesting is the autobiography of Malcolm X. because there's some really zany things believed by Nation of Islam. There's a intergalactic mothership on which Elijah Muhammad flies with atom bombs ready to rain down on the white man. This is stuff that's definitely not part of traditional Islam. And this is the reason why, in the end, Malcolm X converted from the Nation of Islam to regular Sunni Islam. But I've seen Nation of Islam help people. I've seen it. I've seen people become better husbands, better fathers, better citizens. You know, people who dress neat, people who exercise instead of overeating, people who can care about their wives and children. Nation of Islam does provide discipline and order, even while, you know, asking its congregants to believe in what I think are crazy things, that there's a mothership. Hebrew Israelites, I don't see what they offer people except for hatred and division, because I've never heard of anyone getting a job thanks to being a Hebrew Israelite. I've never heard of anyone getting anything but arrested. So, you know, it's like it's not too different in comparison to the other faith I mentioned before, Odinism, which is the white supremacist religion. That's another one that does no good to nobody, because it convinces, you know, people who are involved with that, they get swastika tattoos. Now you can't be part of normal life at all. And while in prison, it's possible to convince yourself that these are your personal beliefs and it's none of anyone's business. But when you get out and you have to live in greater society, not everything is acceptable. So in the same way that the Odinists, the ones who are doing life, they don't care. But the ones who are getting out, once they come out and they have a swastika on their arm, a large part of life is closed off to them. And they're not told that when they enter this religion, Odinism. They're not presented that. So it's like with the Hebrew Israelites. If they believe that Jews are, you know, that's okay to say that the Jews are, they stole all the money and they stole the knowledge, and Jews were all the slave owners, and you know, just all this awful stuff about Jews. You can't keep saying this in regular life and expect to be accepted, and they don't know that going in. And that's why these religions grow inside of prison. I don't think there's too many people converting to Black Hebrew Israelites in the real world, because you have to basically turn your back on accepted history and on the way people speak. People just don't walk around talking bad about every other race. It's not cool in 2020 to be a racist, you know. Even I know there's, you know, ideas about, you know, that Black people can't be considered racist. Prejudice, whichever way you want to formulate the language. Mm-hmm. Thinking about things so strictly racially is not acceptable in the current day.
Right. And I want to ask you a little bit more about the racial aspect. What was, you know, and a Black prisoner who was in that prison, what was their view, someone who's not associated with either Nation of Islam or Black Hebrew Israelites, what was their view of these groups?
They all thought they were kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. They all thought they're kooky. They you know, they normally wouldn't be vocal about it because to each their own, but you know, they'd laugh a little when they would say the strange little things they said and use their terminology. They weren't accepting of it.